This problem is asking us to take a look at rate of change in a slightly different way. We're looking at the rate of change of feet per mile, which expresses how much the hike drops elevation-wise per horizontal or per mile of hiking. So what we notice is that we are going to be comparing feet per mile. So when we're going to be looking at a rate of change, it's going to be the difference in the feet divided by the difference in the miles. Okay, well, let's look at what we have so far. We know that the feet per mile is going to be 1,067. Well, and it should be a negative because it's a drop between these 2 points. So imagine that here you are on a hike at the first tunnel, and then eventually some point you get down here to the first switch. And you know that that drop on average, even though it's not perfectly straight, is about negative 1067 feet per mile. Okay, well, so how would we get that negative 1067? Well, we would take the number of feet we've gone, which is 6708, taken away from 6560. That way we make sure we get a negative number to represent a drop. So this is change in feet. I'll write it that way, and that's equal to this amount right here. Type that into our calculator, gives us 6560 minus 6708, negative 148. And now we don't really know what the change in miles is, because really the change in miles, we would have to take the difference between where we are into the hike, 0.18, minus take that away from where we will be in the hike. Well, we don't necessarily know where that next point is. We just know that that next point will create an average rate of change of 1,067. So in other words, what I'm suggesting is our change in feet over, oh wow, misspelled that, change in F-E-E-T, feet, divided by change in miles is equal to negative 1067. So change in feet we know is negative 148. I don't know what change in miles is without using variables, but I know that that has to give me negative 1067 when I divide them. So this is now just an equation that we need to solve. So to make this a little bit easier so that we don't have to, so that we can get change in miles out of the numerator really easily. And by the way, there are many other ways you can do this. This is just one way. We can just flip both the fractions. Negative 148 equals 1 over negative 1067. So all we have to do is multiply both sides by negative 148 to solve for change in miles. So we get negative 148 divided by negative 1067. And so that is a quick calculator plug-in, divided by negative 1067, and that gives us, depending on how far we want to round, about 0.139. We'll just round a little bit farther. 0.139 is the change in miles. Okay, well, so that means that x minus 0.18 has to give me 0.139, because remember, change in miles equals the difference between where we end up, or how far we are into the hike when we're down at the bottom at the next stop, minus where we started. And I know that change in miles has to be 0.139 equals x minus 0.18. Well, so the difference has to be 0.139. That means that x must be this number plus 0.139 and 0.139 plus 0.18 is equal to 0.319. So x is equal to 0.319. Okay, so that means that we were at mile marker 0.18, but now we're at mile marker 0.319, so that we have an average rate of change of a total drop of 1,067 feet per mile of hiking. Obviously we haven't gone a full mile, but that's what it averages out to. So let me back up for a second and let's just see if we can compare it. We know that our change in feet is negative 148. We know that our change in miles is 0.139. Let's verify that we get negative 1067. So, 148 divided by 0.139. And it gives me negative 1064.7, and that's just because we decided to round to 3 decimal places. So that's it. Again, there are a couple of different ways you could do it. If you look at it graphically, you can see that number one, when we're at 0.18 mile marker, we are at an altitude of 6,708 feet. So here's 6,708. And over the course of some distance that we don't necessarily know, we know that we drop down to 6560? And we don't necessarily know what this guy is right here, but we know that from this point we're going to end up at this point, and we just want to ensure that the rate of change of this line is going to be a decrease of 1,067 per mile of hiking. So that's just a visual way to illustrate it, but still we probably have to do a little bit of algebra to try to arrive at our unknown. This again is just a way of for you to think about the change in over the change in, and where one element is unknown.